in Iran, people are dying every day, about 200 people of dying, everything. And it seems that it's normal. It's okay. It's not a big deal, and it really makes me angry, not just against my country, but against other countries, because I think no one cared about it. Hi, it's Mitra. I'm a media researcher and I'm doing my PhD. I'm living in Tehran. It's about 20 years that I'm living in Tehran, and my parents live in my hometown, but I'm living in the capital of Iran. The first thing that I can say is that this new developments, I mean, the coronavirus changed the way that I thought that my life would be in this year. Because after a year of endeavor, I could travel to the Netherlands as a guest researcher. My plan was to stay there for about 8 or 10 months to conduct my research. But after the coronavirus, I had to change the plan and get on the first plane that I found to come back to Iran, because I couldn't financially afford staying there, because all the universities were closed and it was not convenient to stay there. And the second thing, that is the anxiety and the stress that this situation had for me. Because the first feeling that I had was that I am trapped. When I was in the Netherlands, I couldn't come back to Iran because all this plan was canceled, and I couldn't stay there because financially it wasn't possible, and I couldn't go to the university. I couldn't talk to meet my friends, or even benefit from the facilities of the university that I have planned for it for a long time. And I ran off of the money. There wasn't any way for me to get money from my family or other, because we have this sanction situation that transferring money from our country to European or other countries is very really difficult, and it was very hard time for me. And after coming back to Iran, this sense of being trapped continue, because I just was thinking about all the things that I was deprived of because of the coronavirus. For example, I didn't have any chance to visit museums of the Netherlands, or visit my friends. We had this plan, friends in Europe, to meet when I'm there, but I couldn't do that. And it's why when I came back, I was thinking about all these plans that I cannot, I couldn't do. I came here after this crisis, but I cannot meet my friends. I used to meet my friends every week. At the moment, I'm trapped at home yet. And about the anxiety, all the time I'm thinking about the perspective of the future, that I think it's ruined by this crisis. And I'm really worried about the situation in my country, because I think this crisis added to the crisis of the sanction on my country. And I think we are in a financial crisis. And I'm thinking all the time about the people that have lost their jobs and they do not have money. And I know that our government cannot afford to help them, to support them in this situation. They have decided not to shut down the country for the virus, and the spread of the virus is really high. Recently, every day about 200 people having been affected and died by the virus. About 3 months after the entrance of the virus, I was in Netherlands. It was really different, because they had a sort of lockdown. There was really restricted rules. Every places was closed. People could not have to stay about 2 meters away from each other, or these restaurants were closed, or people have to wear masks. And there was all the time, there was police on the cars or on the horses who control people. But in Iran, people can have these parties inside their house. And even before these months, government lets people to have these ceremonies, for example, wedding ceremonies or funerals, private ceremonies too. But in Netherlands, it was really restricted rules. and it was controlled by the government. My friends who live in Germany or in France and other countries, that I think there have been financial supports. It's the difference between my country and European countries. You know, when the virus started, I wasn't in Iran, but I heard from my family that the spread of the virus was started before even infection in the Western countries. You know, the Iranian government do not declare the entrance of the virus in Iran because they had two important political events in Iran, an election we had and a religious ceremony we had. The government hid the entrance of the coronavirus and they didn't lock down the plane from the China. About 2 months, we had this virus inside the country, especially in two religious cities, but they hide it. And when it worse, they decided to find some way to control it, but asking people to not to travel, but not a strict ban, you know. They wanted people not to go outside, but there wasn't any financial support of the people to, for example, leave their jobs. For about 4 months, they closed the university and some offices, but other non-governmental jobs was open. You know, for example, big malls was open, cinemas was open, because all these things could have financial effects for people because of the sanction or because of some governmental issues. They could not support financially people. Then they decided leave it alone. You know, they I think they leave the people alone. When after about 4 months it gets really worse, they decided to apply some restrictions. For example, at the moment, we are teleworking, we are doing work at home, and we had a pressure on the hospitals and other parts of the country who were affected by the virus. And we could, in Iran, we could almost conquer the disease, but there is a new wave. The government, I think, has no clear plan for supporting people or for restricting or shutdowning the country. I think there is different type of behavior based on the different categories of people. I think the behavior is really dependent on the class of the people. It is possible for rich people to stay far above of other people. You know, in the northern part of the Tehran, for example, where the rich people live, there are big buildings. The houses are far from each other. They can provide their everyday stuff online, but it is not possible for people who live in the downtown. You know, because downtown is very populated, is really crowded, and people do not have a choice to stay away from each other. And since I'm living in the middle of the city, in the city center, which is not poor, it's also not poor, not very very wealthy people do not live here. It's normal. People try to put masks and put a glove, but it is not possible to be very far from other people because it is crowded. People are trying not to travel by public transportation. For example, myself, after coming back to the country, I wanted to visit my family. I just went with personal car. Taxis in Iran is every taxi could four people could stay in a taxi in normal situation, but at the moment 3 person can be getting on a taxi. The problem is that there is a discussions between the driver and passengers because the government do not give them any money for this restriction, and the price of 4 people is divided between 3 people, and every day it is a conversation and a sort of fighting about these prices. As I know, but I'm not sure, there isn't any plan to heighten the rate of this daily transportation. For example, car program, new bus program. Because my house is near to the office, when I want to office, I go walking, or sometimes I use these shared bicycles. and I do not use train or bus because it's really crowded. And it is obligatory to wear masks, but if you do not obey it, there isn't any police or other officials to fine you or to force you to do that. Then when you get on bus, for example, you see many people who do not wear masks. It's really hard to be far from there, to have distance from them because it's really crowded. My personal choice is that not using them, but for many people it is not possible to use their other choices because Tehran is really big and many people come from a neighborhood, and they have to use train or bus, and I think it's the place that people get infected. People who are employed have this opportunity to use this public insurance. Is sort of cheap, I think. But this public insurance do not cover all the things, and it's just for really hard and difficult disease. And there is a long queue in the public hospitals, but all the people are on the cover of this insurance. But you can get better services in private hospitals for sure. When the government declared that the coronavirus is in Iran, we had this rush into hospitals because everyone who just feel that has a headache or has a coughing went to the hospital, and it was really full. But after a while, the virus was under control. It was okay and it was normal. But I heard that at the moment that the rate is really high. The hospitals are completely full, especially in Tehran and in many other cities that have been declared red. And red means being in crisis of the infection and of the rate of the death. And I even saw some pictures in the news that in some hospitals, in the parking of the hospitals, people are lying on the floor, people who have been infected. And I heard that the expenses of the disease is really high for Iranian people. At the first, they said that it is free for people who go to the public hospitals, but I heard that it is not free, in fact, because people have to go and buy this medicine, which is really expensive for that. But I'm not sure about it. I haven't researched about it at all. At the moment, the government asked the officers to be, for example, if there is three people in a room, they asked to hold some shifts in a way that there is just one people in a room. About 50% of a office could go one day and other 50% go on another day. But it is not obligatory for private parts of the country. They can do what they want. But people pressure their employer to give them some rest or do teleworking. I used to stay about 10 hours in office, but I have to stay at home. I had to prepare two chapters in Netherlands, and I wanted to conduct a laboratory part of my research in Netherlands. But when I wanted to start my lab part of the research, the university were closed, and I couldn't do this. And when I came back, I had to write some reports for the supervisory committee. But because I was really depressed in a way, I couldn't prepare this report. And all the connection that we had in the university with my professors, my advisors, and other is not working at the moment. All of them are busy because this new online life, new classes, new online classes has many pressure on them. I think I have lived my work at the moment. I'm not doing anything at the moment. In fact, mentally it's really difficult for me to focus. But I am trying to manage it, but it's really difficult. I used to go to coffee, to cafe, to meet my friends. It's the more things that making me sad because I cannot meet them. It's okay because I can talk with them online. I feel a bit isolated, but I think I'm getting used to it, and I think that I do not want to meet people anymore because I getting used to it. It's sort of strange. It's paradoxical for me. In a way, I miss my friends, but in other way, I do not want to see them more. I'm really worried about my family, my parents, who are almost old. And yeah, yesterday I had this call from my mom, and she said that my dad may be infected, and I was really anxious about it, and I'm really worried about it. I think that he's not affected, but these two days was really odd for me because I couldn't do anything for them. I was thinking about what I can do at the moment, and it was really tough, I think. I have been in Sweden once. I got this feeling that people in the Sweden are deliberately isolated from other peoples. And I think it is normal for them to be alone because I heard that they do not have lots of communication or contacts even with their families. And I think these people in Netherlands was sort of same, and I think for this type of people it's more possible to to live alone in this situation too. But in Iran, we are really sociable people. We used to stay all the time with our family and our friends, and it's really normal for us to meet our in-laws, my husband's family, every week. It's really normal. And at the moment it's really difficult for people not to having this habit. In the spring, in the first day of spring, we had this eve, this national eve, we call it Nowruz, and it's really normal to go every day. We go to families houses to say congratulations them this new year, and for people it was really tough not to having this ceremony. And when it was happening, I were in Netherlands, and my family really, I feel that they are really suffering from not having these everyday parties for the new year. And I think in European countries, people have found their ways of spending time alone. But in Iran, it's especially for the elderly people, it's really tough to find a way to spend their time alone. For example, my husband's have a grandmother, and we used to meet her every week. And my husband will go even two or three times in a week to buy things for her, or just look after her or talk to her. She live alone, but all the time someone is with her, a nurse or my mother-in-law or my father-in-law and other families. And for her it is really tough. All the time she is objecting, and she said that, why don't you love me anymore, you do not come to our house. And she cannot believe that it's because of the disease and because of the support of him not to be infected. And for these people it is really tough, I think, more than us. I really used to go to cinema, theaters, and other cultural events, but it's all closed at the moment. They opened the cinema, but I do not have the dare to. I do not go to them. There was a long public discussion about the theater. Should they be closed or not? And because artists are really in a bad situation, the government tried to open the theater salons, but no one go there. And it's sort of closed, but it's not officially closed. Some restaurants were closed, but they was open for 2 months again. And nowadays they decided to close again some restaurants and just give these takeaway services to people. Before this coronavirus, I used to eat out many times, but it's cancelled, and I try not to even use takeaway foods. But the material that I use for eating, I think it doesn't change yet. About the exercise, I used to go swimming. It was the normal exercise that I did that is closed at the moment. Besides the everyday routine, about half an hour exercise that I do in house, I do not do any other exercise. I do not go even for mountain climbing that I used to do. My husband, who used to go every odd days to clubs, to some sort of tai chi, tai chi exercise. It is really, it's closed at the moment, or if it is open, he do not want to go there because of the fear of the infection. And because he do not go to these clubs, it's some sort of pressure on both of us, because it was a routine for him and for me to do exercise. I think we have to change our life. In this decade, we used to travel a lot. We have this feeling of freedom to live whenever we want. However, it is not possible for an Iranian people because of these political issues. I was thinking to immigrating to start a new position in another university for a postdoc or other things, but I'm sure that it is totally infected by this situation. I'm thinking about even personally trying to learn new things that I can do online, for example, even new jobs. For example, taking some data analysis courses that can be done isolated in house and other things. And I think all the people are struggling with these things, especially people who do not have any special abilities. For example, people who are not well educated and physical workers or other people. I'm not sure about the changes that politicians will have. I think that politicians pressure people to go to the normal work soon because they cannot manage this crisis situation. And I think it's why that there is a new wave of corona infection in my country. I cannot expect big changes just because of the coronavirus in country, because of the sanction and because of the mismanagement of the government. We had this mismanagement in the country for many decades, and there are hand to hand sanctions, corona crisis, and the mismanagement. I cannot separate them, and I'm sure that the situation is going worse and worse because of these different factors. And for example, we cannot sell our oil at the moment in the market because of the sanction. Then the government do not have the money to spend on the supporting of the people, and it's a chain of developments and chain of the problems that make the situation worse for my country, I think. I think that the importance of the life of people in Iran is lesser than the life of other people in other countries. When I was in Netherlands, I get this information that the life of even one person is important. But in Iran, people are dying every day. About 200 people are dying everything, and it seems that it's normal. It's okay. It's not a big deal. And it really makes me angry. Not just against my country, but against other countries, because I think no one care about it. I think it has been like that for all the time. But in this situation, that every country try just to save the people of their countries, it is more obvious. No one cares that Iranian people do not have access to the medicine because of the sanction. Because all the politicians from other countries are busy with their problems, and coronavirus created new issues and new problems that they are more busier that care to other people, other countries' people. And even when these Black Lives Matters movements come in the reality, I was thinking that it's really strange. I know I am against this inequality because of the race or gender or other things. For sure, I'm against this inequality. But I think that the life of many people, even in Iran, are worsening less, because in the USA, one people were what get arrested and violenced by the police, but it is a normal event in Iran. But no one gets sorry, no one gets shit. About 6 months ago, we had this uprising in Iran because of the rise of the gasoline in the country, and about 200 people were killed brutally by the police. But there wasn't any solidarity. There wasn't any uprising in other countries, you know. But and even Iranian celebrities, Iranian artists, Iranian politicians do not support these people because of the fear of the circumstances by the government. But after this movement in America, all the celebrities in Iran, all the people, all the academicians were talking about this inequality and talking against the USA police behavior. And it was really odd for me. Why do not talk about this same behavior by the police or official government in the country, inside the country, but you are talking about outside the country? And it was really strange for me. In Middle Eastern countries, women and other people, many of people are blacks of the Middle East, but no one care about them, you know. And I think this coronavirus situation make everything more complicated in this perspective. And the worth of the life of the people and the importance of the life of every singular people are less at the moment. And it made me really angry.